$1 billion for this fiscal year.
If we want to build more homes faster, we also need to be upgrading critical infrastructure, including water and wastewater infrastructure.
To access the funding, municipalities must meet some conditions.
We're not just going to put this money on the table, wash our hands of the issue and walk away. We're going to insist that our partners make certain kinds of changes that make it easier and faster to build homes in this country.
More 4-unit dwellings, duplexes and triplexes, and standardized housing designs pre-approved by the federal government.
This is how we'll address the shortage of housing options for Canadians.
Looking on is Jim Graham, longtime advocate for the homeless in Nova Scotia.
Whatever we do around homelessness or affordable housing actually starts with the federal government's initiatives. It starts with their money. Without it, the rest of the levels of government can't muster what's needed. So it starts with that.
Graham says if municipalities can get caught up on infrastructure, the next hurdle, he says, is finding the skilled workers to do the construction. Preston Mulligan, CBC News, Dartmouth.
The Nova Scotia government has submitted a new strategy to Ottawa to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's called Still Better Than a Carbon Tax Plan. Premier Tim Houston says the province's new approach is a more effective way to deal with pollution without the need for a carbon tax. Houston sent the plan to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau last week, along with a letter explaining how Nova Scotia is a national leader in reducing emissions. It says the province can meet climate change goals by focusing on larger industrial emitters and legislated targets. The Premier says the plan is a comprehensive one that has expanded since the federal government rejected the original one 2 years ago.
The federal government has an opportunity. They can work with us. So if they would just kind of open their minds a little bit and really put people first, but put the environment first, then they would see that what we're talking about is more helpful for the planet, and it certainly supports people. And we just asked them to do that. So they asked us to put a plan in. So we updated our plan. We added more to the plan. It's still better than a carbon tax. It's very complete, and I just hope that they take it seriously this time.
Both the provincial Liberal and NDP opposition leaders say there is nothing new in the plan and expect it to be rejected again by Ottawa. Prime Minister Trudeau responded to Nova Scotia's latest approach while in Dartmouth today. He says Nova Scotia's earlier plan did not meet federal levels and there needs to be fairness on the price of pollution across the country.
Meanwhile, protesters who oppose the federal carbon pricing caused delays at the Nova Scotia-New Brunswick border on Monday. Many were carrying signs that read "Axe the Tax." About 100 cars and trucks lined either side of the highway before the RCMP were forced to close it for a few hours. The protest coincided with the increase in the national consumer carbon tax, which most Canadians will see reflected in their energy bills and at the gas pumps. Rebates aimed at offsetting the additional expense will also increase.
This week, the federal government says it's allocating $1 billion over 5 years to fund a new national school food program. This comes on the heels of the Houston government recently announcing that it will begin a universal school lunch program this fall. Lindsay Corbin of the Nova Scotia Coalition for Healthy School Food says her organization hopes to be a part of the startup of the programs.
There are a lot of details that we don't have yet, but there are lots of things that we can do to, help the programs be the best that they can be.
I'll talk to Lindsay Corbin about what school food programs might look like in the future. That's our Newsmaker interview just after 6:30.
An historic snowfall in Cape Breton may have made the spring litter problem worse. A local environmental group says many trash bags were run over by snowplows. Now the group is working to clean up the mess before it becomes a bigger problem. Erin Potty reports.
Marcus Gartland spent an afternoon picking up trash in downtown Sydney. He says the spring thaw has uncovered piles of litter in the Cape Breton Regional Municipality. He's found a mix of items from fast food wrappers to cigarette butts and even some roof shingles.
It's becoming more visible to a lot of people, and we just want to remove as much as possible. So it's very unfortunate, but it is the reality that we're facing.
Gartland works for the environmental nonprofit ACAP Cape Breton. During a recent cleanup, they collected 21 bags of litter in downtown Sydney in less than 2 hours.
People are definitely talking about it. I think the quick snow melt was a bit of a shock. it doesn't look good, but it's also not great for our environment. And you definitely see it around everywhere, but there's been a lot of people going out and collecting, which is really nice to see. The community seems to have mobilized around this issue.
They say some garbage bags were torn or run over at the curb after record-breaking snowfall in February.
People leave their garbage out to be collected, and then when we get inclement weather, if it's snow, rain, any kind of storms, it can get picked up by those storms and blown away. Or if the snow comes and then the plows come and they haven't removed their garbage, oftentimes the plows will run it over and tear it up and create even more litter. So I think that is a lot of what we're seeing right now.
ACAP is lending out items to people wanting to organize cleanups in their community. These loaned kits include supplies such as buckets, gloves, and trash grabbers. Group officials collect trash data every year in the CBRM, and they say so far there are signs of more household garbage being found than in previous years. The group's executive director says cleaning up the mess is important.
So we are a windy place, and in Cape Breton Island, you're never more than 23 kilometers from either the ocean or the Bredor Lake. So most of it will eventually end up in the sea. Some of it will end up in our wetlands or freshwater lakes.
Aiken says garbage that's left behind can pollute an area and is harmful to plants, animals, and humans. Erin Potty, CBC News, Sydney.
And Ryan Snoddon with us now for our first quick peek at the weather forecast.
And all right, we're into April. Isn't it supposed to be showers, not snow?
April showers, flurries. I'm not sure exactly how the saying goes, but yeah, listen, we do have snow on the way, and everybody's talking about that. Despite the fact that it was such a beautiful day yesterday and another nice day today, although the clouds already increasing, and you can see rolling in from east to west tonight. Few flurries mixed with showers in through Cape Breton as we speak. That's actually thanks to a low that's spinning east of Newfoundland, and that is not the low we're going to be watching for Thursday, but it will, again, continue to bring some clouds, a couple of showers mixed with a few flakes tonight and again for tomorrow. And then this system here rolling through the Great Lakes is going to spread snow from Ontario through Quebec, across the northeast parts of the U.S., and then here into the Maritimes. Now, how does it all play out? Well, you can see the clouds really quite dominant for tomorrow at times, though I do think we will see some sunny breaks, and yes, a chance for some isolated showers and a wet flake mixing in there as well. And then as we move into the Thursday time period, again, that snow is going to spread in throughout the morning for you folks in the west of the province, and then it will spread east and into eastern areas throughout the afternoon. Note a lot of pink here. We will be looking at this as a very wet snowfall. It will come down, it'll be heavy, and so that will be problematic. A, because it'll make the roads slick with that slushy accumulation. B, heavy snow tends to kind of weigh down on the branches, which then impact the power lines. So there is going to be an increased chance for some power outages because of the nature of the heavy wet snow. We will be looking at it mixing to rain, and then yes, those gusty easterly winds as well will be gusting 70, 80, even 90 kilometers per hour along parts of the coast. Most of the action lifts off to the north as we move into the Friday time period, but still some lingering showers and wet snowfall possible through Friday. But by the time we get to Friday morning, that'll be, again, kind of the main meat and potatoes of the system. And just to show you, this is one model, but I think it's doing a pretty good job of showing how variable this snowfall will be. Because it's going to be so wet and heavy, kind of a widespread 5 to 15 centimeters, but highly variable based on your elevation, your proximity to the coastline. Inland and higher terrain areas, Tom and Amy, are going to be the greatest chance to see those amounts closer to 15 centimeters by the time we get to Friday morning.
Seems cruel somehow, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
All right, thanks so much, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
A volunteer fire department in Cape Breton is shutting down after a struggle to find staff. The chief and volunteers at the Tower Road Fire Department decided at a municipal meeting last week to relinquish its certificate and close the fire hall. 2 neighboring volunteer fire departments will now be responsible for the area. The Cape Breton Regional Fire Chiefs Association says finding volunteers is challenging for departments in the region.
With fire, there's your scheduled time at the fire station, but then there's all the unscheduled time at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon that you just can't plan for, and just the inherent danger of it. But I think with that danger comes a lot of reward when you're actually active.
Beresford says regional fire chiefs and stakeholders have formed a committee to figure out how to incentivize people to volunteer for the local fire departments.
The neighborhood where Halifax's major wildfire began likely won't see a new emergency exit this year. Westwood Hills in Upper Town Talon still only has one way in and out. City staff suggested 3 routes from the subdivision to Highway 103 in November, but they said it would take time to figure out who the landowners were and where to build the best one. The president of the area's Residents Association says he's been told it won't happen this year, and that's causing some concern.
People are traumatized by this and need peace of mind to know that if and when another emergency happens in our neighborhood, that they've got more options to get out of it than they did. There were folks who had an absolutely harrowing experience trying to get out of our neighborhood, and it's not right to keep prolonging this for them. Get it done.
The municipality does have the power to expropriate land, but the area councillor says that's still a lengthy process. The fire last May destroyed 151 homes and displaced thousands of people. At least 3 Atlantic right whale calves have died so far this year. That's according to an international organization that's calling on the federal government to step up protections for the marine mammals. Oceana Canada says right whales typically give birth off the coast of Georgia and Florida and then make their way back up to Canada for feeding. Fisheries and Oceans Canada announced last week it was making no changes to last year's right whale protection measures, noting the same speed restrictions and gear prohibitions will remain unchanged in 2024. The organization says it's glad Ottawa hasn't backtracked, but added there's need for more action, including making ropeless fishing gear a priority.
A New Brunswick woman now living in Halifax is inspiring people who are physically disabled. She was born without a hand, but now has a bionic prosthetic and is working as a certified fitness instructor.
And as we see here in this report from the CBC's Paul Palmater, she's also training for an upcoming bodybuilding competition.
Marissa Gorgizada was born without a left hand, but it hasn't stopped her from living a very physical lifestyle. Now a 26-year-old fitness instructor, she has 3 different prosthetics that she wears. She received her first prosthetic arm when she was 5, but she spent most of her childhood years not wearing one.
I didn't accept myself, so that's why it was such a mental battle for me to make friends, because I couldn't believe anyone would want to be friends with someone with one hand. So.
This prosthetic, called a bionic hand, is the one she wears the most. It has 14 different grip patterns that help her in a wide variety of daily functions.
So if I hold the flex, you'll hear a beep, which then changes the grip pattern to the pointer finger, which I use for pressing buttons and typing. And then I can change the thumb, like so, to do a power grip. And then I can beep again to do another grip pattern.
She's had the $55,000 prosthetic for 2 years, and it has changed her life. Always one who took fitness seriously, she has taken part in 4 bodybuilding competitions, where she's won 3 of them, and she's now training for another show in Moncton later this month. When she's working out, she uses this prosthetic, which is more activity specific.
So this one here is the weightlifting one. Essentially, I got this one when I was 15 or 16 years old, and it helps me with any type of pulling movement, pushing movement, jump rope, any type of balance movement. Like I can do basically any movement with this hand.
Gorgizada lives in Halifax but grew up in St. John and has had several prosthetic devices that she received from the Atlantic Clinic for Upper Limb Prosthetics in Fredericton.
She uses the muscles in her forearm, so her flexors and her extensors, to control open and close of the hand. So every time you contract your muscle, there's a little electrical impulse, and we kind of capture that with a surface electrode, and that sends a signal to the hand.
Prosthetics have come a long way in the last 2 decades with advances in medical technology. At this lab, they are constantly trying to perfect designs and refine the electronics that go into the products they have developed for people like Gorgizada.
She has a huge social media presence that our patients are seeing, and it's kind of showing them that, anything is possible, and as an athlete you can compete if you just don't let it get in your way.
Gorgizada says it will be a relief to finish her training for the upcoming competition. Just 4 months into her new job as a fitness instructor at this gym, she's already impressed the clientele.
When she first walked in, a lot of the clients were just like, wow, what an inspiration that is. To see her here very confident with picking up the heavy things with one arm.
Paul Palmeter, CBC News, Halifax.
It's amazing how the technology has advanced.
It's true, and good luck in that competition.
Indeed. All right, first quick break on the way. Stay with us.
There's a lot more to come on CBC Nova Scotia News. An Israeli airstrike has killed 7 international aid workers in Gaza. One of the victims was a dual Canadian-American citizen.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump is facing more legal and financial problems this week, but it doesn't appear to be hurting his re-election bid.
Lots of water flowing in Victoria Park. Ryan is up next with his full weather forecast. We'll see you in a few.
All right, we were just talking during the commercial break about getting the snow tires off the vehicle.
Yesterday.
I picked Thursday.
Amy already got them
has hers off. Very gutsy of her, I think.
Yeah, and Tom, your appointment's Thursday.
Yeah, exactly.
You can send your blame and your hate mail to CBC Nova Scotia. Tom and Amy. Yeah, that's right, Ryan's picks, yeah. Listen, a lot of folks usually point the finger at me, so I'm happy to share.
We'll shoulder some of that.
We'll drive carefully.
Sure. That's right. Yes, and that is the key for sure. A lot of folks like you have already, changed the tires, and so Thursday is going to be a dicey day for that. It will be slick and some slow going travel for sure. And if you can work from home, then that'd be a good idea. Hard to believe that that's what we have coming down the pipeline when this is what we have out there now.
Yeah.
Lunenburg, beautiful, beautiful right now. 9 degrees there this evening. Sun and clouds still, just super, super nice. The highs today, we hit double digits in Lunenburg and in Halifax and in Keji and 13 Shelburne and Western Head. Just terrific. You can see a bit cooler, obviously, in the northeast at 2 degrees in Sydney. We've got to 3 degrees at that Caribou Point station. Temperatures right now down to 1 in Sydney, as we said, still hanging on to 9 in Lunenburg, still into the double digits down and through the southwest. So as we mentioned earlier, here's the system that we're watching here off to the northeast, kind of backing its way in. And here's that next low here, which is going to be spreading in that snow across the Great Lakes and then into the northeast. Note the jet stream well to the north, 17 in Edmonton right now. So we are seeing some signs of spring, but a little taste of winter coming back in here over the next couple of days to eastern Canada. Temperatures tonight are going to be near the freezing mark. Winds from the northeast, but relatively light. There are the clouds that will work their way in from northeast to southwest overnight tonight. Couple of flurries or showers mixing in with that. And a similar story for tomorrow. Couple of showers mixed with a few flakes possible. Temperatures are going to be on the plus side, so for the most part it is going to be a shower. We will see some sunny breaks for tomorrow, no question about it. Temperatures 3, 4, 5 degrees with the winds from the north tomorrow. Similar story for the Northumberland shore. 3, 4, 5, even 6 degrees along the eastern shore tomorrow. 3 to 5 to 6 degrees through the valley tomorrow as well. And again, these precipitation chances are in the 30 to 40% range that they'll track through your backyard. So really quite isolated and overall just a day where the clouds will be quite variable, but we will see some sun in the mix. As we said, the winds a little more easterly and through the Halifax area. There's Thursday. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be a plus side event, meaning the temperatures will be above the freezing mark through the duration of the event. That will lead to this being a very wet snowfall, which tracks into western areas through Thursday morning. The winds increasing, so that wet snow, as it's weighing on the trees and potentially knocking up against some power lines, the winds aren't going to help that as well. So there is the power outage concern. Note all this pink here. This is, again, that wet snow. It is going to be quite wet. That's why we're, again, looking at likely a really variable snowfall by the time we get to Friday morning. We're talking about kind of a widespread 5 to 15 centimeters. Could see some pockets that do exceed 15. Inland higher terrain areas, especially the Cape Breton Highlands, that's our best chance to exceed 20, maybe 25 centimeters there. And we will see, again, lower amounts right along the coastlines. Now, as we turn the page into Friday, we're going to continue to see the potential for some wet snow in through the north and east with some rain mixing in further to the south and west. The best chance of further accumulation on Friday will be in Cape Breton. Showers mixed with flurries Saturday, clearing through Sunday. And as of now, solar eclipse day for Monday, not looking too bad. I'd take it if that was the case. But again, a few days before we get there, and so we'll keep you posted on
no
that.
pressure. Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, unauthorized stores selling cannabis continue to open despite provincial regulations. Some are operated by Mi'kmaq, claiming they have a treaty right.
The right to sell cannabis is escalating into a contentious legal and social battleground. Richard Cuthbertson explains.
Do Mi'kmaq store owners have the right to sell cannabis outside Nova Scotia's regulated system? That's a question that is coming to a head as a number of store operators face charges and vow to fight them. Section 35 of the Canadian Constitution recognizes and affirms existing treaty and Aboriginal rights, When we think of treaty rights in Nova Scotia, we typically think of the fisheries. Mi'kmaq have asserted, for instance, they have a right to earn a moderate livelihood from the lobster fishery, following a landmark 1999 Supreme Court of Canada decision. But does that right extend to cannabis? In Nova Scotia, only the Crown Corporation, known as the NSLC, has been permitted by the province to sell cannabis. But that hasn't stopped the proliferation of unauthorized stores. Some Mi'kmaq operators charged with cannabis offenses are relying, at least in part, on the Peace and Friendship Treaty of 1752. It was signed between a Mi'kmaq chief and the British governor of Nova Scotia. Here's part of it. And that, in the meantime, the said Indians shall have free liberty to bring for sale to Halifax or any other settlement within this province skins, feathers, fowl, fish, or any other thing they shall have to sell, where they shall have liberty to dispose thereof to the best advantage. So, does that free liberty to sell include cannabis? Well, according to a legal brief filed last year by a federal prosecutor in one of these cases, a treaty right to trade only involves items and commodities that were actually traded before the treaty was signed or were reasonably contemplated at the time. Under a nearly 3-decade-old Supreme Court of Canada decision, it's even harder to prove an Aboriginal right. That's because the test laid out by the High Court says defendants must show that the practice, custom, or tradition existed before European contact, that it was integral to a community's way of life, and that the modern right has a reasonable degree of continuity with the practice of the past. In short, the cases before the Nova Scotia courts could come down to a crucial question. Did historic Mi'kmaq communities trade in cannabis? That is hardly clear. Some historians have pointed to the early 1600s as the first time cannabis, in the form of hemp used in rope and clothing, was planted in Nova Scotia. This was done by a French apothecary. That said, there is evidence that cannabis was growing wild in parts of North America. Some Mi'kmaq store owners have noted cannabis is a plant, one that can be used for medicinal purposes, and the Mi'kmaq have long used plants as medicine. Even so, using that to prove a right to sell cannabis today, that's likely an uphill climb. In the summer, a multi-day hearing is scheduled in a case involving a band counselor from a central Nova Scotia First Nation. Chris Gugu is challenging 2 charges he faces under the Cannabis Act related to a December 2020 RCMP search of a dispensary he runs on reserve land in Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia. There's different possible outcomes. He could win, in which case the Crown could appeal and it would head to a higher court. He could lose and appeal to that higher court, or he could abandon his challenge entirely and face sentencing.
Together in numbers, we are stronger. We're stronger as a nation, so stick together. We got to stick together.
The Aboriginal rights test laid out by the Supreme Court, which focuses on what happened before European contact, it's been criticized for setting too high a bar. It's very difficult to prove. It's also been criticized for not recognizing that practices and customs, they evolve. And there are Indigenous law observers who hope the test will change. And maybe it will one day if the Supreme Court weighs back in.
Thanks, Richard. Up next, I'll talk with the Nova Scotia Coalition for Healthy School Food about new food programs coming to a school near you. That's our newsmaker.
Please stay with us. You're watching CBC Nova Scotia News.
The federal government is allocating $1 billion over 5 years to fund a new national school food program. But the Houston government has also recently announced that it will start up a universal school lunch program this fall. Lindsay Corbin is with the Nova Scotia Coalition for Healthy School Food. So, Ms. Corbin, we now have the federal government's new national school food program. The provincial program also coming this fall, or at least starting. What's your understanding of how all of this will play out for hungry students in our schools, do you think?
Well, it's a really exciting time for the school food movement. As you've just explained, we've got 2 levels of government that have made significant commitments to funding a school food program, starting in the 2024-2025 school year. There are a lot of details that we don't have yet, but there are lots of things that we can do to, help the programs be the best that they can be.
So, in your mind, what should a school food program look like?
Well, the Coalition for Healthy School Food actually has 8 guiding principles that are all based on, evidence as well as the experiences of our many hundreds of members who are experts at providing school food and have that experience. So, the number 1 on our list is that the food be healthy. So yes, it's great to fill bellies with, in any way that we can, but also nourishing kids, really making sure that they're having meals that are well balanced. Another one is universal. So we know from the provincial announcement, they talked about the fact that this would be free for anyone who needs it, and potentially a small cost for those who can pay. That to me describes sort of a pay what you can program that we've seen in other provinces like PEI. And it really is a way for all kids to be able to come and eat. But not have any stigma attached to, certain kids are accessing the program and others are not. It can be done in a way where there is no way of knowing, how much each child's family paid for the meal. So that's another really big one. And another I'd like to highlight is flexible and locally adapted. So all of the schools in Nova Scotia and all across Canada are certainly very unique. They have their own mix of students from different backgrounds. The schools themselves have different infrastructure, different assets. So it's really important to work with those school communities to, consult with them and help them to create programs that actually really work well in their unique context.
So universal, but not necessarily uniform, I suppose. And how do you make it available to kids without that stigma that you alluded to?
So universal programs, really for, speaking specifically about the lunch program that Nova Scotia has announced, and my understanding of, what their intention is with that is that having lunch at school just becomes part of what everybody does. So it isn't based on, you have to go to a specific program because you're accessing a free lunch. It's just in other G7 countries, for example, all the other G7 countries, they have some kind of a school food program. I was just watching a short video about Sweden's program. And in countries like that, literally, it's just part of the school day. The meal is included.
Some schools do have breakfast programs now, however, informally they are run. I guess I'm curious, what can you say about the level of need in schools right now?
We know that schools have, like families, have struggled to keep up with the cost of food for their breakfast programs. So We know that the schools have often, over the last couple of years, been running out of their breakfast program money earlier and earlier in the school year, and having to fundraise more and things like that. We know that more and more students have been trying to access these programs again because of the affordability crisis and the cost of living. So there's never been, a better time to invest in school meals because, again, all across Canada, we're really seeing the need is just grown exponentially.
And so realistically speaking, in the few seconds we have left here, how quickly would you or could you expect to see these kinds of programs ramp up?
I know that certainly the Nova Scotia lunch program, they're expecting to start that in elementary schools in the fall, and then gradually over the 4 years to expand to all the higher grades. So it definitely will take some time, and certainly some regional centers for education are more ready for to be able to implement. They're already, for example, the South Shore School Food Program is a wonderful example. It was highlighted in the Auditor General's report. They've got the infrastructure, they've got the people, they just need the money. Other regional centers for education in other parts of the province are at varying degrees of readiness. But we definitely are optimistic that they're going to be able to start something in the 2024-2025 school year for elementary schools, and I just I'm really hopeful that they will take the lessons learned from programs within Nova Scotia and across Canada, and take advice from academics who are studying school food to make these programs the best they can be.
We will see how it rolls out. Lindsay Corbin, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, the number of migrants entering the U.S. from Mexico is at an all-time high, and Texas is moving many to other states.
An Israeli airstrike has killed 7 international aid workers in Gaza. The group was working with the charity World Central Kitchen, which has been supplying meals and food to the besieged territory.
They're the first foreign relief workers killed in Gaza, which is becoming an increasingly dangerous place for those working to provide assistance. The CBC's Chris Brown has the latest.
Video at the attack site showed a hole in the roof of a vehicle right next to the clearly marked World Central Kitchen logo. Israeli media claims a 3-car convoy had just made an aid delivery and was stalked overhead by a military drone hunting for a Hamas militant. It fired once at each car, with those inside scrambling to get to the next vehicle in a desperate effort to save themselves before all 7 were eventually killed. Eyewitness Shoaib Al-Jares said the vehicles were distributing food. We saw that the Israelis had targeted the foreigners inside the car. In Rafah, the workers' passports confirmed who'd been killed.
Hey, this is Zomi and Chef Olivier.
Among the dead, 43-year-old Zomi Frankham from Australia, a longtime volunteer, a Polish man, 3 British nationals, a dual Canadian-American citizen, and their Palestinian driver, who was buried Tuesday. Israel's prime minister said the aid convoy was attacked in error. There was a tragic case of our forces unintentionally hitting innocent people in the Gaza Strip. This happens in wartime, said Benjamin Netanyahu. From Israel's key allies, there were expressions of outrage, but no other repercussions.
But we expect a broader investigation to be conducted and to be done so in a swift and comprehensive manner.
While these are the first foreign aid workers killed in Gaza, almost 200 Palestinians working with the UN have also died, along with civilians trying to get food, making such deaths an increasingly frequent occurrence rather than an exception, says this former Israeli peace negotiator.
We have seen incident after incident where attempts to get supplies in have ended up seeing innocent civilians killed. Now those delivering the aid have also fallen prey to those Israeli strikes.
World Central Kitchen and other private aid agencies have now stopped operations in Gaza, and ships sent from Cyprus with more than 200 tons of aid have turned back.
It's very hard not to see this as some kind of strategy of using aid as a weapon.
Again today, the UN warned of a looming famine in Gaza and complained of obstacles Israel has created in getting aid in and distributing it. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
A shooter opened fire at a school in Finland today, killing 1 student and wounding 2 others. The suspect and the victims were all 12 years old. Police cordoned off the area around the school, which is 19 kilometers north of Helsinki. Parents rushed to the scene in a panic.
I got a call from a friend that he just read the news that there have been some shootings in my son's school. So I just rushed here and I came to and I found out there was a lot of people there and the police were there too.
Parents had to wait for 3 hours to be reunited with their children. The suspect ran from the scene but was later apprehended. The 2 wounded students are reportedly in grave condition. Gun ownership is widespread in Finland, and children over 15 can have licenses to use other people's firearms. Police are investigating.
Donald Trump is taking his re-election campaign to Michigan and Wisconsin today with rallies in both key battleground states. It's happening amid major developments for the former president's financial and legal challenges. But so far, none of it is hurting his re-election bid. Katie Simpson reports from Washington.
Donald Trump is furious that he's been ordered to stop attacks on specific people about his upcoming criminal trial. The judge overseeing the hush money case expanded a gag order, forbidding Trump from talking about his family members, in addition to court staff, witnesses, and prosecutors.
I have a Trump-hating judge with a Trump-hating wife and family.
Trump had also specifically gone after the judge's daughter on social media, naming her and accusing her of being a rabid Trump hater. It's all part of the narrative he's trying to create, that the justice system is stacked against him and that all of his charges are unfair. The presumptive Republican nominee is also lashing out about the fact that he's had to come up with $175 million for a bond payment to prevent New York State from seizing some of his assets in a separate civil fraud trial.
I didn't do anything wrong. I had to put up a bond this morning for $175 million. I did nothing wrong.
While it's far less than what Trump was originally ordered to pay, he's still angry that he's had to put up anything while he appeals the decision. Trump had hoped some of his financial woes would be eased when he took his social media company, Truth Social, public. His net worth, though, dropped by about $1 billion on Monday after it was revealed the company actually lost nearly $60 million last year. Despite all of this, there are no signs it's a deterrent for his supporters. Trump is on track to clinch the Republican presidential nomination this summer. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
The number of migrants crossing into the U.S. from Mexico has reached an all-time high. Texas has responded by sending many of them to other states. Paul Hunter has a look at where those migrants end up and what they face when they get there.
Ever wonder about the fate of the countless migrants from South and Central America who cross into the U.S. at the Texas-Mexico border, only to be put onto buses by the Texas governor and shipped off to so-called sanctuary cities in New York, Illinois, and Colorado? Well, welcome to Denver.
Here, at the end of the line for those buses from Texas, they land in hotels turned migrant shelters. Others can spend weeks living in camping tents or scouring for necessities, in this case in a church basement filled with donations. Throughout, combating those who deride or fear all of those who've crossed into America to claim asylum seeking a better life. We're not looking for government handouts, we're told by Daniela, who spent a year fleeing violence and corruption in Venezuela before ending up in Denver. We want a safe place to live, she says. We're not here to commit crimes. Denver has taken in more undocumented migrants per capita than any city its size in the country. It's cost the city millions as the country debates the best way forward. And as Donald Trump, who's pledged mass deportations if elected, battles it out with Joe Biden, who pushes back at Trump in their fight for the White House.
Now he says immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country.
They're poisoning the blood of our country.
What the hell is he talking about?
For millions of Americans, it is the single biggest issue ahead of the November presidential election. And it is a challenge that continues to grow daily. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Denver.
4 people made a narrow escape in Newfoundland after their vehicles were struck by a landslide this morning. It happened in Corner Brook on the west coast of the island. A truck carrying 2 people was swept into the Humber River. Another vehicle carrying 2 others was hit by falling rock and dirt. And the area has been slammed by a heavy rainfall and melting snow in recent days. It received 120 millimeters of rain in just under 100 hours.
Comic actor Joe Flaherty has died. Flaherty was an American performer who made an international name for himself as a founder of the Canadian sketch comedy troupe SCTV. Flaherty was born in Pittsburgh and started in dramatic theater after a stint in the U.S. Air Force. Eventually, he joined the Second City Comedy Theater in Chicago, and he performed with the company for 7 years before moving to Toronto to help set up a Second City troupe in Canada. He also wrote and performed on the SCTV show, playing iconic characters like anchorman Floyd Robertson, Count Floyd, and talk show host Sammy Maudlin. Flaherty made numerous film and TV appearances, including cameos in Back to the Future 2 and Happy Gilmore. Joe Flaherty died yesterday after a lengthy illness. He was 82.
Canada's main stock index declined more than 100 points today. Here's a look at the markets as we head to break.
For news you can trust, we have the latest on what's happening in your community and a weather forecast you can rely on no matter where you are in Atlantic Canada. I'm Amy Smith.
And I'm Ryan Snoddon.
Join us for Atlantic Tonight.
Right after the National.
Sunny pick. I'm hoping for a sunny pick tonight.
Well, and we did have some nice weather yesterday and today, so
that's right.
We can't forget that.
Friday, Saturday was a bit more challenging.
It's true. There's a lot of photos coming in right now, which is great. Ryan's picks was nicely full, and there was lots to choose from. I decided to go with definitely a spring feel for this one. Have a look at this pick from Beaver Bank, again in north of Halifax. Beautiful spot, of course. And
Oh, and the bees.
We've been seeing more flowers all along, haven't we, the last few days?
Yeah. And
Beautiful.
that bee is getting his fill. Trish, thank you so much for sharing this. Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. And yes, the crocuses are definitely coming out. And yeah, they're hardy, thankfully, because they will need to be with this weather that's coming in. So for tonight into tomorrow, some building clouds, some sunny breaks. As you can see, it will not be blanket wall-to-wall clouds. We will see the potential for a shower mixed with even a wet flurry. Temperatures are going to be in the low single digits, low to mid single digits, I should say, for tomorrow. 3, 4, 5, but some 6-degree temperatures right along the Atlantic coastline, shielded from that east to northeast wind that we're going to be looking at for tomorrow. Now for Thursday, yeah, that's what everybody's talking about right now. And it is indeed going to be wet snow tracking in. Note the areas that you see here really turning to pink through the Thursday afternoon time period. It is going to be a wet snow. It'll start to mix with rain for the Thursday evening into the overnight time period, lingering into Friday morning, especially for the Cape Breton Highlands. And that is going to be our best chance, the Highlands, of exceeding 15, even 20 centimeters, but widespread amounts, 5 to 15 centimeters by the time we get to Friday morning. And again, the eclipse looking good right now.
Yeah.
That's good at least.
Wonder where that bee's going to go Thursday.
Yeah.
All right, finally tonight, fictional character Dr. Dolittle asked us to imagine if we could talk to the animals.
And a psychology team now says we probably can, at least when it comes to dogs. Rohan was among the dogs invited to the lab. Electrodes were applied and the objects were presented along with a word. Sometimes the right word, sometimes a wrong one.
The experiment elicits a specific pattern of brain waves when conducted on humans, and the same pattern was observed in the dogs.
The researchers say it indicates a mental memory of the word and an understanding it represents something. Next step in the research, other animals.
All right.
Dogs are smart.
They
Dogs
sure
are, for
That's
sure.
it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.